Everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson's in Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook, coming soon. Missing 2 on Amazon by Mia Molson Zia. Double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Illumniptically, Think Tank of the Future. The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist, Serena Wagner. Also High 10 Music. Check out the latest at high10music.com. We're here with a terrific lady who's an author and associate professor of Yiddish and Holocaust Studies in the Department of Literature at Tel Aviv University and multilingual. She also received her PhD from the same university in 2014 in history and also taught courses in Yiddish, Holocaust Studies in Israel, and also the Ben Gurion University and the University of Haifa, I got that right, held a Rothschild, a postdoctoral fellowship at Columbia University. She did all the research exploring the connection between the language, ethics, and historical imagination in Holocaust testimony. And she has a new book exploring how a new strain of Yiddish just came out of the road among Jews, describing unprecedented reality. It's called Occupied Words, What the Holocaust Did to the Yiddish. Live, ladies and gentlemen, Plus Studios. She's on tour, by the way. She's in somewhere in beautiful Massachusetts, the author, associate professor of Yiddish, Holocaust Studies in Department of Literature at Tel Aviv, and the book Occupied Words, What the Holocaust Did to the Yiddish. Ladies and gentlemen, the multi-talented Hannah Pollin-Galay. Hannah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike.
Well, it's great to have you on board, and maybe you can just wish your people good morning, good afternoon, good evening in Yiddish. I'd like to hear some of that.
Good morning, guten Tag, Shalom Aleichem. When I say Shalom Aleichem, you answer Aleichem Shalom. Let's try that. Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem.
Okay, close enough. Good.
Well, I'm not afraid to try a few things. You want to do some lessons? That's fine as well too.
Clearly, if you're willing to talk about Yiddish on your show, you're open to trying new things.
Well, you know what? I think that'd be great. But first, let's get to you being an author, associate professor of Yiddish and Holocaust Studies in Department of Literature at Tel Aviv, and multilingual. You received a PhD from the same institution. You did research exploring the connection between language, ethics, and historical imagination, Holocaust testimony. Your new book explores how a new strain of Yiddish basically just came out of the road against the Jews. It described an unprecedented reality, which is brutality, imprisonment, and dehumanization within the ghettos and death camp, defying comprehension. And of course, this also just took on new words, pre-words, and kind of modifying the language during the times as well, and new reinvented words and something to learn. The book is called Occupied Words, What the Holocaust Did to the Yiddish. And before getting all that, Hannah, tell us how you first got started.
I was listening to a lot of Holocaust testimonies, oral testimonies and video testimonies in different languages, in Hebrew, in English, and in Yiddish. And when I was listening to these testimonies in Yiddish, and I know Yiddish well, I kept hearing these words I didn't understand. And it was a mystery to me. What is this word? What is that word? Why? And I would look in a dictionary and the words weren't there. And I would ask my mentors, people who were native speakers, they also didn't know what these words were. And I also noticed that when these Holocaust survivors would share these code words, they kind of did it with a little wink and a nod, like there was something special about these words.
Oh, really?
And right around this same time, when I discovered these mysterious words, a colleague handed me a dictionary. Actually, I have it right here.
Okay.
Handed me this dictionary of Holocaust neologisms, new words that were invented in Yiddish in the Holocaust.
Oh, wow. I like to hear some of these words. This sounds interesting.
So, for example, one of the words, there's a word malech, which is a normal Yiddish word that just means angel in normal Yiddish, and actually it's in Hebrew too, malech. But in the Kovna ghetto during the Holocaust, Kovna is in Lithuania, malech came to mean a minor, a child who was paid to do the work of an adult, an angel. Okay, so you kind of
okay, all right. So it took on from angel to minor to child, so it somewhat had different meaning, but it was changed to code. Okay.
Yeah, so some words were like that, where the word already existed, but the meaning changed, and some words were just completely invented wholesale for things that, like, for example, theft. How do you describe theft in the ghetto if all Jews were born criminals and everything that they did was criminal under Nazi law to begin with? Then how do you describe somebody stealing something, one Jew stealing from another in the ghetto? So they invented new words for that. One word, for example, Schabrevin, which sounds funny even to Yiddish speakers. They wouldn't know what it was. It would sound like nonsense syllables, but that word came to mean, it's kind of paradoxical, looting or taking ownerless property. So it's both stealing and not stealing at the same time. And
Okay.
that word contains a paradox because that was the reality. Law was a paradox at the time, and they needed new words to describe that paradoxical situation.
Okay. All right. I'm kind of throwing some words out there. How about breakfast, lunch, or and dinner in Yiddish? Like say
But
it's
those
breakfast
words didn't
time, lunchtime,
necessarily
dinner time.
change, but they did have new words for food because starvation and lack of nutrition were some of the key elements of Holocaust victimhood. So there were a lot of words for strange kinds of food. So, for example, in the Vilna ghetto, they called, or no, sorry, in the Lodz ghetto, they called horse meat ihihi, which is onomatopoeia for them. That's supposed to sound like a horse
Oh,
neighing. Or the
hee
word
hee hee.
yeah, neighing soup was soup made out of horse meat. And by the way, horse meat is not kosher. It's forbidden in Jewish law. So these people wouldn't have tasted horse meat beforehand. But this was what they did out of desperation. They ate dead horses in the ghetto. And there were all kinds of words surrounding food and eating, or like a word, again, going back to Lithuania, a new Yiddish word there was yushnik. Yushnik before the war was pig feed, and yushnik became a word for a certain type of food, for a certain type of slop that they would be given in the ghettos and in the camps there. So there were actually a lot of new words for food or kinds of food. Also, another one was that they didn't have, again, it all comes from lack. Lack is the base. They made coffee pastries, kava pletzlich. Now that sounds
Ava
delicious.
Peklek. Okay.
It means that doesn't mean though a pastry to go with your coffee. It means they got fake coffee as one of their main sources of nutrition, and then they would take it and fry it in a pan and pretend like that was a pastry and eat it.
Hmm.
So there were new words for food, though breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't think that anyone was eating 3 meals a day. I don't think that those words were even relevant to that reality at all. But it's a good question.
Hmm. And of course, you also think about like say you already said good morning, good afternoon, good evening in Yiddish as well too. How about like say it's bedtime, go to bed, and I think there's also what are some of the other
Yeah, I
ones?
don't know. I
Wake
don't know if
wake
those
up.
phrases change so much. I think though that, one thing that you could say is that what's left for posterity, what I'm able to study is what people left me, these dictionaries and lists of words. People were actually fascinated in the camps and ghettos about what was happening to their language in real time. This wasn't just a topic that interested people after the Holocaust was over, after the war. People in ghettos were recording lists saying, oh, okay, what's going on around me? Why am I speaking like this? Why are people talking like this? And so they wrote it down in these single words. But of course, the change was bigger than just a vocabulary change. It was a change of the way that people spoke to each other. If they even were able to communicate, if they were able to understand each other, because uh, you know okay, so you talked about good, morning, evening, and night. What do these things even mean? If you're up all night, starving, or your family's, yanked out of your home in the middle of the night, night doesn't even mean anything anymore. Or you're woken up at the crack of dawn to go on a work shift. So they might not have had a different specific vocabulary words for each of those things, but communication itself was so strained, and that was part of why they were interested in this new vocabulary, to capture that feeling that communication had been strained and changed so radically.
Hmm. And what about the people that spoke the traditional Yiddish compared to the people with the modified Yiddish? It's like how do they manage to communicate, or was there some major conflict between those who spoke traditional Yiddish and
Yeah.
the modernized back then Yiddish?
The Holocaust Yiddish. I think that that's an interesting topic. I think that everyone integrated these words into their vocabularies to some extent. maybe some people were quicker than others to pick up on the new words and they would have an advantage. Just like in any situation, when people pick up on new skills or new words, they're going to have an advantage on people who don't pick up on the new vocabulary as fast. What I can say about that is that, street singers were actually really important in recording these words. And I think that they were also important in kind of conveying what these words were to people, that street singers in the ghettos and in camps too. There's a song like this from Auschwitz where they sing a song and they incorporate like the newest, cool, most updated word. And
Hmm.
part what they're doing is holding up a kind of verbal mirror to people saying, this is how you're talking right now. But it's also a way of like, for some people, of getting informed, like, oh, well, this is now the newest word for soup, or this is now the newest word for work. So it would pass through conversation and it would pass also through song.
Okay. And plus, too, that you talk about song, verse, and everything like that. You also had Jewish comedians back in the day, the Yiddish comedians back in the day as well, too. And about, maybe, say, like Yiddish writers and everything like
Yeah.
that. You also had a good number of writers, coming from the Yiddish areas, too. And I thought of like Jackie Gleason along those lines, too. And I think there was also Jackie Mason somewhere
Oh
along those
yeah,
lines. Yes.
Jackie Mason. Yeah, all these folks have roots in the Yiddish tradition. I mean, I'm not going to say that Yiddish is funnier than other languages or Yiddish culture is funnier than others because every culture has people who are funny, people who are not funny. But there is a really strong tradition of humor in Yiddish culture. It's a lot of it's based on irony, and it's the irony of being an outsider. Yiddish speakers were outsiders pretty much wherever they were. Yiddish wasn't a national language anywhere, so that kind of outside perspective can give you an ironic, bite to your humor. And there was definitely ironic humor, in the camps and ghettos. And part of some of these words are not funny at all. Well, like, okay, let's go back to the example that I gave you of Malech, of a word that used to mean angel, now meaning basically an exploited child. On the one hand, there's nothing funny about that at all. I mean, if I envision my children being paid to lift heavy rocks, for an adult as slave labor, I'm not laughing. But there is a humor in that, saying like they're bringing this, celestial being, the angel, down to earth and calling this, this practice of paying somebody off being an angel, and they would actually call the person that was paying the angel, the malach, got, God. So that's also, there is humor in that. And there was a lot of humor also about Nazi, because not another way that the language changed was that the Nazis took over the space of writing and reading and signage and labels. Every job, every new authority figure has a Nazi name for it. It's not a name that they came up with, and the place names changed, and every sign is in Nazi German, and that's incredibly oppressive. And that's actually one of the sources of the title of my book, Occupied Words, that they feel like their words, their speech is being occupied from the outside. But at the same time, there was humor about this. Like Nazis loved acronyms. If you think about like, lots of people in power love acronyms. It's a way of confusing you and making themselves sound smart. So Nazis had tons and tons of acronyms, BDM and NDM and all these things. And there were some Yiddish jokes about these acronyms. They would make up fake acronyms that were, in Yiddish and not in German. So for example, Nazi is in of itself, an acronym, Nationalsozialistische Partei. But so they made up an acronym that sounds like a Nazi acronym. For example, NDM. That sounds like a classic Nazi acronym, but it actually means Nicht dein Mazel, shit out of luck. So
Ah,
it's a way
Nishta
of,
muzzle. Okay,
yeah,
I have to remember
exactly,
that word.
getting
Ah,
underneath.
Nishta muzzle. Oh, I think I'm going to sound like Mel Brooks as well, too. He incorporated some of that humor.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Oh
yeah, you know
yeah.
something, too? The one movie that made me think of was Blazing Saddles. And I talked to somebody
Oh,
about
oh
that.
yeah,
And,
that's a good one.
and they said something, too, about Blazing Saddles is a fact that, people are saying, oh, they're glorifying the Nazis, making the Nazis look great. But in reality, I talked to somebody who worked with Mel Brooks, and he said they're actually making fun of the Nazis because
Of course.
the fact that they had the best plan in the world, they executed like crap. Poorly
Well,
executed.
Gene Wild, no, there's so much from the Yiddish tradition, so much of American entertainment culture that comes from the Yiddish tradition. I mean, even if you think about, you know, about Curb Your Enthusiasm, the opening song, the dun 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 dun. That's
Hmm.
that's a, that's a tune from this Catskills, from the Yiddish vaudeville. Larry
Okay.
David, up until today, we're drawing from the Yiddish humorous tradition. And so it's interesting to see how people drew from the Yiddish humorous tradition during the Holocaust as well. Of course, it's not just funny, but they did use humor to re-empower themselves in the face of all this loss, and including language
Which
loss.
loss? And of course, a lot of humor involved as well too. And get to more of that. And I'm gonna throw these words out there: Kripo, Ovman, Aksti, Leistung, Roko Mande, Kenkarte, Shaber, Shabriven, Shukistes, or something like that. So these words I'm given here, what do they mean? We'll find out just in a minute, along with the book Occupied Words with Hannah Pollin-Galay. First, you listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. It's powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking at a professional website without breaking your budget, Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today, 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show. Get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you'll love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, 1 target, where truth is illusion and those who love you first go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has gotten great reviews. An evil evident George by Howard celebrities, including Joanna Cassidy, Forbes Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today for It Goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia, coming soon to Amazon. Double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Illuminate, think tank of the future, bring scientists and engineers together from all over the world, create a method to construct a renewable generator. This unique product operates on a closed loop system, generating more energy internally than it needs to function. The XX electricity can use to run everything from homes, power grids, phones, and even laptops. This power source is renewable, highly scalable, most importantly, self-regenerating. Visit facebook.com/Ellumeniptical. That's ELLUMENIPTICAL today. Also, the Mike Wagner Show is brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, including 30 exquisite paintings in King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote, and as a time as a shepherd growing up, plus his complicated yet turbulent relationship with King Saul, story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check it out, Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. Also brought to you by High 10 Music, featuring Smash Hit, Baby Come Back. New music coming soon. Check it out, high10music.com. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. 40 podcast platforms, heard in 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Support us on Anchor FM, PayPal, the Mike Wagner Show, YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, Spotify, Spreaker. Make sure you subscribe for great gift ideas. Go to Amazon.com. Be sure to check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. Check out the t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies. Makes great gifts 24/7. Go to Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast. And for more great gift ideas, Amazon.com/Mia Molson-Zia. Great books, merchandise, and more. Check it out today. We're here with the amazing author and associate professor of Yiddish and Holocaust Studies in Tel Aviv, Hannah Pollin-Galay, here on the Mike Wagner Show. Now, I threw these words at you. It's Kripo, Obman, Aksi, Leistung, Rokolmande, Kenkarte, Shaper, Shabriven, and Shushkis. And I hope I got this right. I bunched it up. What do those mean?
All right. First of all, before I go through the vocabulary list, let me tell you where you got that list from. So this is this man, this cultural activist teacher named Nachman Blumenthal from Lublin, Poland, and around the beginning of the war, he escaped to the unoccupied Soviet Union, so to Central Asia. And then at the end of the war, he came back. In 1944, he comes back to Poland, to Lublin, and he's a Yiddish speaker. His friends are all Yiddish speakers. He comes back, and he encounters his friends who, unlike him, had survived the war in the camps and ghettos. and he couldn't understand what they were saying. So
Hmm.
that's when he experienced this kind of feeling of shock, like language shock, like, whoa, something's really happened to our language. There must be some really important message in these words. So he started to then research the words, and he built this. He built up. He gathered scraps of paper, and he wrote down words as he heard them. And he said, "I'm gonna learn something incredibly important about the Holocaust experience." And eventually, over time, he published bits in the 1950s and 60s. But eventually, he published 3,000 entries of new words and phrases in 1981. So that's how you. That's how, and that's when he tells the story of this language shock. That's the list that he shares. He said, all of a sudden I was hearing these crazy words and I didn't know what they meant. So what did this? Okay, let's go back to the list that you shared. The first one is kripo, right?
Yes, Ripo.
Kripo, it means it's short. Again, I told you about like stub words and acronyms. It means criminal police, so criminal police, and that's in Lodz. So it's a new kind of police. Another thing that they needed lots of new words for were lots of different
Ah,
kinds of
gotcha.
police.
So in other words, it just take like criminal police. They just hack off the first
Right.
syllable, hack off the other, and just put it together. Almost sounds like our language system in a way where it's like say recreational teacher or rec teacher, something like that. It's like
Yeah, in
cut
some
off one
ways, yeah,
syllable, cut off the
different
other, and just put it together. You're right.
subwords come out, which is yeah, all right. And so yeah, that's also in 1984. George Orwell creates that language of authoritarianism with lots of subwords like that. Um, and puts them together. So there's a lot that you can do with that, and there's lots of parallels in different situations too for kripo. Okay, what's um, aktia? Aktia, that's one that a lot of people probably heard of. Aktia, it's hard to translate though, and it means action, but it meant like a major deportation and mass killing. That's what they called it. A lot of
Oh,
it, a
okay.
lot of it is very euphemistic because the Nazis didn't. How can you even have words for this cruelty? But also, the Nazis purposefully used lighter, easier words to describe what they were doing to make it seem like they weren't, committing genocide. So, aktia, action, sounds like a very neutral word. That's what it meant, coming in and doing a roundup, gathering people. And there's really, yeah, you can't really translate it in one single word in English, can
Right.
you?
It sounds like Russian too. That I was talking to somebody when they say, what was it, Dobar Utra? That means they say, good morning. The morning is good. It's a beautiful day, great day, everything like that. It sounds like along those lines, you utter one word, it can take on several different meanings, and it could depend on their perspective,
Yeah.
what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, you brought up the word I actually mentioned it a second ago, the two different variations of shaber, which I mentioned was means looting and not looting at the same time. And what's really interesting about that word, it's from the Warsaw Ghetto, and that was a touch point. That was like a hashtag, like a meme. Everybody was talking about that word in real time in the Warsaw Ghetto. For example, right after the Great Deportation in 1942 in the Warsaw Ghetto, there were which murdered tens of thousands and deported hundreds of thousands. There was a reporter, a journalist named and a writer named Perezo Puczynski. After all this, he's lost everything. The whole entire universe has collapsed. He sits down and writes a six-page essay on this word, Shabrivin. And
Oh,
he
wow.
tries to explain it and he gives examples. And he says, I really hope that future generations will use this word to understand this. I hope this will be a siman muvhak, a paradigmatic sign of who we were at this moment. And so it's an interesting question. Why did he want us to remember the experience through this word? What was so special about this word or about these Holocaust neologisms in general that would make people want to remember them? We would think they would want to forget these really painful words, but in fact, they wanted us to dig into these words like messages in a bottle and try to tease out really a lot of details of their lived experiences through these words that were invented.
Okay. And plus, you also have the other words like Lace Dung, Rocco Monday, and Ken Carte as well, too.
Yeah, Yeah, some of these are, a lot of these are about the routine. Like you asked me what's good morning, so roll commande is in the camps where they, line up and they take roll command. So it's not especially colorful word, and it's not that the words separately existed, but of course no one was used to having to take roll every morning. So in that sense, some of these words just describe the new routines, rituals of daily life that were forced on them.
Okay. Okay. All right. This one thing that brought me as well too. I did not think of this earlier. That you show me the new dictionary of the new Yiddish words of 3,000, and what happened to the original Yiddish dictionary? Were they carrying? Did they get lost somewhere in the shuffle, or did the Nazis come in and destroy these
No,
original
no, no.
dictionaries?
Yiddish, I mean, look, first of all, so there are 11 million Yiddish speakers around the world before the Holocaust. 45% of them are killed in the Holocaust, and the environments in which Yiddish would produce new speakers, meaning the towns and cities of Eastern Europe, are also destroyed. So it's not just that 45% loss, it's also a future loss, missed opportunity. And so the language is greatly reduced, the number of speakers, but there's still a lot out there, there's still millions out there. And they're speaking regular Yiddish, the ones this is a really special sociolect that people, survivors, and not, I mean, let's remember that most people who were subjected to, Nazi ghettos and camps died. So most of the people who knew this sociolect were killed. So what's left behind is from those few survivors, as they call it, Shere Saplete in Yiddish, the surviving remnant, and whatever songs, writings, diaries they left behind. So Yiddish continued to, thrive, exist, be written in. Isaac Bashevis Singer, you've probably heard of him, who wrote Yentl. It's the Barbara Streisand movie is based on this.
Oh yes, that was a great movie. I remember now. It's like this is all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So Yiddish continued to be Yiddish for other people, but not for the people in the camps and ghettos. So the dictionary, the language wasn't lost at this moment, but for those who were in under Nazi occupation speaking Yiddish, the language changed considerably with these new words.
Okay, and plus as well too that the Yiddish were changing dialects, changing means to confuse the Nazis. The Nazis turned around and did the same thing to pretty much outfox them.
Yeah, well, not even before, the Holocaust, since the rise of the Nazi Party, all throughout the 1930s, Nazis were controlling and shifting languages. They would send out like words of the day, and they would change their vocabulary. So German also changed a lot, and people recorded that. There was actually, a diary that a German Jewish man named Victor Klemperer kept of how German changed throughout the Nazi regime. And it did also change. And some of this was purposeful, like top down, like let's change, let's use this word instead of that. And some of it was just an outcome of the radical change of circumstance. So if you think about, in our lifetimes, the things that we've seen where language has changed a lot, think about like the coronavirus pandemic period when all of a sudden we're using all these words that either we maybe used once or twice in our lives or never even heard of or they never existed. Like we're saying, oh, I'm potting with someone, so and so. Oh, so and so, this event was the super spreader. I'm masking, all these new words that came out of a really big historical social event. So we didn't plan to invent those words, but they came out. So that's the same thing with Nazi rule, that some of the words they planned and some of the words came because things were so different. One really interesting example of a word that Nazis changed and that came into Yiddish in an interesting way was this word Aussiedlung, which in German it means relocation. Okay, but actually Yiddish and German are similar, but they're not identical. And in Yiddish, in pre-war Yiddish, Aussiedlung, which is the equivalent, means to curse someone out.
Oi Zealand, Oi
Always
Zealand, Oi
Zealand.
Zealand.
But it's
Yeah.
so, but in the ghettos, again, I mentioned earlier about euphemisms. They use this word Aussiedlung, Aussiedlung, not just to mean relocation, but to mean expulsion and mass killing, taking people out of their homes and bringing them to camps is Aussiedlung now. So Yiddish speakers are now using this word that used to mean to curse to now mean expulsion and certain death. So you see how it moves from a Nazi euphemism of a regular word, but euphemized to come in and actually totally flip around the meaning in Yiddish. So it's not just a euphemism, it's also just a complete definitional change. Another Nazi word that they used was organisieren. So in the Weimar period, they liked the word system. Everything was systematic, and the Nazis wanted to think about power in relation to being organic. So organization has the same root as organic, like saying that it was power came from their race. They were organically more powerful than other people. Organisieren, Organisatio became these really, really popular words for the Nazis, and that made its way into Yiddish also, especially in camps, and it became a word in Yiddish for stealing, or to organize was to steal. And people were also like, sometimes they would stop and like take a breath or take stock and we're, wait, why are we using this word organized to steal or to grab something? And anyway, what's wrong with stealing if this is the only way that we live? So you see, each word contains a story, a cultural story, a geographic story, a story about power, but also often a kind of ethical dilemma that they faced.
Okay, and also too, after the Holocaust, some of the Yiddish that remains and everything, and of course, for the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and up to today's, it's like how much the Holocaust has still an effect with Yiddish culture and everything else, and how much it's lightened and everything else. So it's like how is Yiddish being used today? Was like any
Yeah. Well,
associated with Holocaust or
yeah, it's a sad story of decline because, like I mentioned, for 45% of the Yiddish speakers were killed, and then the places where Yiddish was most intensely spoken were destroyed. But there was a very strong already Yiddish speaking community in the U.S. and then in Israel and all over the world. In Argentina, they have an incredible book series about the Holocaust, incredible Yiddish culture there in Paris. There's a wonderful Yiddish culture after the war. So there's really, and in the Soviet Union as well. But however, Stalin turned on the Jewish leaders and the Yiddish speakers and the Yiddish writers after the Holocaust when they weren't useful to him anymore. And actually, one of the cultural activists that recorded these Holocaust Yiddish words, Elias Spivak, he was arrested in 1949 and he died during interrogation in the Soviet Union, but he had managed before that time to record these Holocaust Yiddish neologisms. But so Yiddish had a global spread that kept it alive, that keeps it alive. But for a lot of speakers, it was really hard to keep it up because there were very few schools in Yiddish. And once you don't have schools and a culture for children, they start speaking the language around them and things can fade. The exception is, of course, as you probably know, in what's often called the ultra-Orthodox community or Haredi community, Hasidic communities, where they really make a point of continuing to speak Yiddish in those communities. So if you go into, Borough Park in New York or Mea Shearim in Jerusalem or in different ultra-Orthodox communities, you'll hear Yiddish. And because of the birth rates there, they have big families. So in a sense, they're keeping Yiddish stable in their communities. And there's over 1 million Yiddish speakers around the world, and they speak Yiddish very, very well. They mix in a lot of English words, or if they're in, wherever they are, they mix in the language that they hear around them, but they are still speaking Yiddish. And
Mhm.
of course, besides them, the culture's out there. Like you've seen Yentl, anybody can see Yentl. Anyone can see Fiddler on the Roof. The culture's thriving.
And of course, if you've seen Spaceballs or Blazing Saddles, any Mel Brooks movie, at least you got to see that. But if you didn't, you're a schmuck. You say that as Mel
That's
Brooks would
right.
say.
Anyone who hasn't seen Blazing Saddles, they got to do that now.
You got that, or someone will take that away too. And what else has come up with Hannah Pollin-Galay in her book, Occupied Words, What the Holocaust Did to Yiddish? We'll find out just 1 minute. You listen to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by our official sponsor, The Mike Wagner Show, international warring author, me, Moses, you're missing. Also brought to you by Lumnifical, think tank of the future. The Sweet Psalms by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David, available on Amazon, and High Time Music. Check out the latest at hightimemusic.com. We'll be back with the amazing author Hannah Pollin-Galay of Occupied Words after this time out. We're back with author Hannah Pollin-Galay of Occupied Words, What the Holocaust Did to the Yiddish, here on the Mike Wagner Show, and just a couple more things about your book as well, and also going up as well, and how much of Yiddish is being affected by social media, and do you think that social media presence could encourage the Yiddish culture?
Oh yeah, you know what? Actually, social media. I mean, I have people that I follow on Blue Sky and Twitter in Yiddish. Social media and the internet has helped Yiddish a lot because you can communicate with anyone anywhere in the world. So you don't have to have a neighbor who speaks the language. People learn Yiddish. You know, it used to be that if you don't have a Yiddish class, you don't live in whatever big city, New York, Tel Aviv, LA, you don't have a Yiddish class, so you can't learn the language or keep it up. And now, you know, with online learning, anyone anywhere in the world can take up a Yiddish class and keep going with it. And it's amazing. As somebody who I run an international Yiddish summer program in Tel Aviv, and, you know, not right now because of the war, but in peaceful times, and hopefully we'll return to peaceful times, people come from all over the world to learn Yiddish there, from China, from Japan, from Georgia, meaning the country, from, you know, Lithuania, all over Europe, North America, South America, and some of this is, you know, curiosity about this cultural treasure that they feel has been, you know, lost or greatly damaged by history. And some of this is also, you know, what the wonders of the internet that you can start learning. And like some people, you know, I don't, you know, for example, Isaac Bashevis Singer, whom we talked about earlier with Yentl, has a really big fan base in Japan. And so some of the Japanese readers said, well, what would it mean to read Isaac Bashevis Singer in the original? And they, you know, get into it and eventually brings them to Yiddish. And once you get a taste of it, you keep going. So there's a lot of interest in Yiddish, and definitely the internet is a boost for any small language, not just for Yiddish, in that you can keep it up with different people, you can correspond, and you can read, you know, books in Yiddish. The Yiddish Book Center has scanned 10,000 Yiddish books. So really, I have no excuse not to read a book in Yiddish. And so it's out there. So you're gonna sign up for a class, Mike?
Well, I plan on to. Otherwise, I'd be a schmuck if I didn't. So I got to say
Right.
that I'm taking up Mel
You got to
Brooks,
learn
and
more than just one word. That's right.
you got that right. And also, lastly, how can we help?
How can you help? Yeah, I think that, well, take an interest, check out those, read. It sounds like you have a lot of listeners who love books. So
Yes,
I
we
think
do. Plenty of them. Whoops,
that
my cheat sheet's not one of them. Plenty,
plenty,
plenty, and
plenty.
also I got a few more. I'm gonna dig up in the back as well too in the
Yeah,
archives. I'm gonna say plenty,
plenty.
plenty, and also
Yep.
I've had some guests also on my show. Plenty,
So, yep.
yes, and plenty, and yeah, even more plenty. I got plenty of books, as you could tell. So
So yeah,
I'm
I think that, you know, book for people who love reading books, well, I'm excited to share my book with whomever wants to read it, Occupied Words, and I think people who are far away from Yiddish culture have told me that it's accessible and interesting to read, but also reading Yiddish literature. I mean, you can download Enemies, you can buy, you know, whatever Kindle copy of Isaac Bashevis Singer, Enemies, a Love Story. And that's an incredibly, you know, hot novel in any language, in any translation at any time. You don't even have to be doing it, you know, to support Yiddish. But in the end, you're reading something that was written in Yiddish, and people say, "Oh my goodness, this incredible literature was written in Yiddish," and then it sparks curiosity. I think
Mhm.
that one of the greatest things that we can do today for humanity is to remain curious. And even if Yiddish and the Holocaust are really different and really distant from your own history, I think being curious and looking into it is a real gift. And curiosity brings empathy. And with the rise of anti-Semitism today, I would love for people to be interested in Jewish culture and say, oh, look at this, humane, interesting tradition, this legacy. And I think that's a really great step.
And certainly is. And speaking of great step, maybe you can just read a line from your book in Yiddish or pick up something in Yiddish and maybe just recite a line, recite a phrase in Yiddish.
Oh, that's a good one. Let me think
Or
of
your
something.
favorite poem in Yiddish or something.
Yeah, that's a good one. Mhm. Um, Let me think. I'm gonna just open up again this dictionary that because that's the book I happen to have on my desk right here, and the introduction that you read from is very moving, and it also has a very some very touching lines, or very powerful lines about what he was experiencing, what other people were experiencing at the time. Um, Let me see here. Hmm. Okay, this is an interesting one for people who are interested in how these words spread and what it meant to be in different places. Um, Man darf auf euch nehmen in Betracht, es jedes Ghetto, bechol sheken Lager, unter Todesstrafe, nicht herausgehen, nicht reingehen. Man darf sich zu lieb dem wundern, wo's nicht geguckt auf dem, ist deswegen etwas auf Verbindung zwischen die Ghettos fortgewähnt. So he's saying you weren't allowed, it's amazing to him that even though people weren't allowed to come into different ghettos and they weren't allowed to go out and they weren't allowed to travel between camps, somehow there are similar words that came out of these different camps and ghettos. And that's when he says, maybe it's not all just circumstance. Maybe there's kind of a common sensibility or a humor or even a poetry that people shared in these different places. And that's what led them to create similar words in these different places. And I think that's a really wonderful question to ask.
And I think that's really curious as well, too. We encourage everybody to do that, not just come up with something and said, what'd you say? Nothing else is clearing my throat. So let's get past that stage test from Spaceballs as well. And where can we find occupied words, what the Holocaust did to the Yiddish, Hannah?
Anywhere you like to buy your books online, Barnes and Noble, Amazon. The place that I like the best to buy it from is Penn Press because they have incredible discounts now up through the end of the month of December, 40% off. So you can really get the book for a song if you go to Penn Press. That's University of Pennsylvania Press, and the book is Occupied Words. And I think that yeah, it's a very generous offer they've got there. So that would be my favorite place to go. But it's all over the internet. If you Google occupied words, Hannah Pollin-Galay, you can get to it. You can also walk into your local bookstore and ask them to order it. That's another great thing to do. Support those local bookstores.
And that's a great idea. And how about your website and how can people contact you?
You can contact me if you look up at Tel Aviv University, they have, faculty email addresses there, so you can contact me that way. You can contact me through the publisher. I actually don't have a website, personal website, aside from my university site, but that's what I do. I'm a, you know, it'd be an interesting thing to do, but somehow anyone who wants to find me manages to. So, uh, I'm on social media, Blue Sky, X. You can find me, Hannah
Okay.
Pollin-Galay.
Okay, we'll certainly check out as well too with the amazing author Hannah Pollin-Galay of Occupied Words, what the Holocaust did to Yiddish here in the Mike Wagner Show. Just a few more things, Hannah. What else can we expect me in 2025 and beyond?
For me, well, I'm working now. I'm trying to work with some partners on creating a larger study, like a meta dictionary of words that were invented during the Holocaust in different languages. So Yiddish, but also maybe French and Roma, like some people call them gypsies. Roma, Sinti languages also had new words invented in German, of course. So I hope to be able to do that. And then I'm also working on a new project, which might sound strange to you, about nature during the Holocaust and how
Oh, wow.
prisoners saw nature, trees, the moon, the sky, water. Did they feel like nature was betraying them? Did they feel like this was something that gave them strength? So that's a new project that I'm working on now.
Oh my gosh, I'm so looking forward to it. I was talking to somebody about nature and how they interact and everything like that. Love to have you back. And who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
My biggest influence.
In your career, yes.
Yeah, I probably my father. Both of my parents are incredible people. My father is a professor of economics, and he is a really, really dedicated researcher, and he's a really dedicated writer. And all throughout my childhood and teenage years, and sometimes even college, he read everything I wrote, every
Oh,
single
wow.
paper, even if it was, if I gave him one night to read 70 pages, he would do it. So that was a really big influence for me. And of course, my mother supported me in wonderful ways as well. So them, yeah, both of them. And they were both, by the way, my mother and my father, they were the first readers of this manuscript. So I got a
Oh
lot
my
of really
gosh, that's
good feedback from
great.
them.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Great, great way to learn as well. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Anybody who wants to, about
In
life or
general.
about reading, writing, what, I
Nope.
don't know.
Just best advice in general.
Um, I think I'm going to go back to the note of curiosity, to make sure that you're curious about people and make sure you're curious about someone who's different from you. And I think that if we could be more curious about each other, then we might be able to understand each other a lot more, and maybe we'd have a lot less hatred in the world, and read books, not just internet, not just tweets, and not just TikToks. I think reading is a way to expand who you are and expand your world and to act on that curiosity. So there you go. My two pieces of advice connect to one another.
Yes, we do. And that is great advice indeed. With the author, Hannah Pollin-Galay of Occupied Words with the Holocaust did the year here on the Mike Wagner Show. Hannah, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a
Thank
lot. Looking
you.
forward to having you soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We'll have you back. Once again, what are the websites you can find you? How can people contact you? And where can people get a hold of your books?
So you can get Occupied Words on Barnes and Noble, Amazon. You can get it from Penn Press, University of Pennsylvania Press website with a 40% discount, which is going to make it very, very affordable and accessible for a lot of people. And you can contact me on social media. You can contact me through Blue Sky or Twitter, or you can go to my university website and see my email address.
We will certainly check that out. Once again, Hannah, very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having it soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. We'll have you back. We wish our best. And Hannah, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Mike. I really enjoyed talking to you.